You're listening to School Leadership Reimagined, episode number 19.
Welcome to the School Leadership Reimagined podcast, where we rethink what's possible to transform your school. If you're tired of settling for small wins and incremental improvement, then stay tuned to discover powerful and practical strategies for getting every teacher in your school moving towards excellence. Now, here's your host, Robyn Jackson.
Hey builders, welcome to episode 19 of the School Leadership Reimagined podcast. I'm your host, Robyn Jackson, and today I'm going to do something special for you. I'm going to let you steal my team meeting agenda. This is the exact agenda I use with my own team during our weekly meetings, and it's the agenda I teach to my clients to help them have meetings that are more efficient and that help everyone be more accountable. Okay, tell me something. How many of you love going to meetings? Go ahead. Raise your hand. Raise your hand if you love to sit in a meeting. That's what I thought. I didn't think so. That's because most meetings are, quite frankly, a waste of time. We don't mean to waste people's time when we have a meeting. We actually have good intentions, things that we need to discuss, items that we need to address, issues that need resolving. So why is it that most meetings are such a waste of time? Why is it that most meetings we sit around and we blah, 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 but we don't actually solve anything? Or even if we commit to doing something, when we come to the next meeting and we ask, okay, is this done? Is that done? Is that done? Nothing's done. Well, it's because although we sit there and we discuss things, very rarely do we actually resolve anything or make true commitments to doing the work after the meeting is over. So in other words, most meetings don't result in any kind of action. So that's why today I want to share with you a meeting agenda that I use to help my team and I take action. And it also has the added benefit of helping keep everybody at the meeting accountable to what they commit to doing in the meeting, so that everybody has to take action and I don't have to yell at them to get it done. And this is also the agenda that I share with my clients. So when my clients are working on really moving their schools forward, one of the things that we often find is that they have really ineffective and inefficient meetings. And this agenda, we put this into place and all of a sudden they're getting stuff done week after week after week, just moving along because they have a meeting agenda like the one that I'm going to be sharing with you today. So this is an agenda that you can use for your weekly leadership team meetings, but it also works really, really well for teacher team meetings. In fact, it's the best meeting format that I've ever seen for helping you identify and talk about what's really important, and more importantly, take action on it once the meeting's over. But before we dive into this meeting agenda today, I want to first remind you about Builders Lab 2019. Because during Builders Lab 2019, I'm not only going to be sharing this accountable agenda with you, I'm also going to show you how to set up your entire meeting rhythm so that you're meeting about the right things with the right frequency and you're actually achieving your school goals. This is just a tiny part of what we're going to be doing at Builders Lab 2019, because for 3 days, we're going to be working together to help you identify your school goals, map out your own unique success path to achieving your goals, and then you're going to learn how to use the 4 disciplines of buildership, feedback, teacher support, accountability, and culture to actually achieve your goals. And here's the best part. After you've learned all of that, we're going to spend an entire afternoon taking everything that you've learned and mapping out a 90-day plan to achieving your goals. And it's not one of these kind of 90-day, I will do this kind of thing. It's an actual step-by-step process that's going to help you take everything that you've learned in Builders Lab and use it to achieve your goal in the next 90 days. I mean, think about that. Most conferences give you a ton of information if you're lucky. And then you go back to school with like a binder full of handouts and all these good intentions to implement what you've learned. And then as soon as you get back, you're slammed with stuff and you never actually get a chance to apply what you've learned. But that's not going to happen at Builders Lab because everything you learn is going to be immediately applicable. We're not going to cover a bunch of fluff. You're going to come to Builders Lab with your goals and you're going to leave with a step-by-step action plan to achieve your goals, plus all the tools that you're going to need to make it happen. So when you return home to your school, you can hit the ground running. Now, right now, if you're listening to this podcast near the air date, you can take advantage of the early bird special and save $100 off of the ticket price. Just go to mindstepsinc.com/builders, BUILDERS-lab to learn more about Builders Lab and to take advantage of this early bird price. Now, I need to warn you, we're already about 30% sold. We've been probably a little bit more than that by now. As of the time of this recording, we're about 30% sold. So you're going to have to act fast because I fully anticipate that we're going to sell out this year. So again, go to mindstepsinc.com/builders-lab to learn more about Builders Lab 2019 and to save $100 off of your ticket price. Okay. Now let's dive into this meeting agenda. So first, I should tell you that I didn't make up this agenda format myself. I actually stole it from a guy named Gino Wickman, who's the author of a book called Traction. And I stole it a few years ago. And I'm telling you this so that you won't feel bad about stealing the agenda from me because after all, I stole it from Gino. Okay. Anyway, I've modified it slightly to make it work in a school situation. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through each of the parts of the agenda and explain what they are and why they work. And I'll tell you also how to adjust it for if you're doing it with your leadership team or if you're doing it with a teacher team. And then at the end of the episode, I'm going to give you a link so that you can download the entire agenda and use it at your next team meeting. Deal? Okay, good deal. All right. Now the agenda starts with something called a segue. And this is really a chance to help everybody, really shift their focus from whatever they were thinking about before the meeting to what they need to be thinking about at the meeting. So rather than, doing the normal thing where you just do a few minutes of idle chit chat, what you do instead is you have everybody go around the circle and they share a win that they had since the last meeting. Now, this does a couple of things. First, it helps everybody kind of, ease into the meeting. And second, it gets everybody thinking about and focusing how they're individually progressing towards your team goals. So they start really focusing on, what have I been doing in the last couple of weeks and where are the wins? And then third, and I think this is the most important part, it starts the meeting off on the right foot. It starts the meeting off by celebrating kind of what you've done prior. Because remember, in the meeting, you're going to be tackling some really heavy stuff. So, you don't want to be so focused on that you don't take a moment and stop and think about the wins. I mean, we never do that. We never spend time thinking about wins. And so by starting the meeting, focusing on wins before you start attacking challenges, it's everybody in the right frame of mind. And you'd be surprised at how hard it is for people to come up with a good win for each meeting. I mean, you start asking people like, oh, I don't know what it was my win, but it's really important that you do it because having them go back and review the week and find the win gets them in the right frame of mind. So don't skip this part. This part of the meeting should take, 5 minutes, no more than about 5 minutes. Okay, so next you're going to spend the next 5 minutes going over your team scorecard. And your team scorecard is where you review the 5 to, at the most 15 of the most important numbers in your school to determine whether you're on track. So for instance, your SIP plan this year may be about increasing student attendance. So each week you need to review your attendance numbers, or perhaps you are focusing on reading proficiency this year. So you need to track how students are making progress at each grade level, or, maybe you're focusing on student suspension. So each week you need to review the suspension number. And the point is that each week you need to be looking at about 5 to no more than 15 key numbers that tell you how you're progressing towards your goal. So one of the things we're going to be doing at Builders Lab 19 is we're going to be talking to you about what numbers you should be tracking and helping you figure it out. It's not like a set of, it's not like a set group of numbers. We're going to help you figure out what your numbers should be. And then once you have them, you're going to be, looking at those numbers every single time that you meet. And you're not just going to be looking at lagging numbers, numbers that have already happened where you don't have a chance to do anything about them. You want to try to find a few leading indicators that let you know early on whether you are making progress towards your goals or not, so that you have time to do something, to intervene, to impact those numbers and thus, impact your school goals. Now, during the meeting, all you're going to do is you're just going through the numbers, and that's it. You're not going to discuss the numbers. You're just going to say, okay, how are we doing with suspensions this week? What's the number? What was last week's number? Are we on track? And if a number indicates that you're on track, great, you're on track. And any number that indicates an area where you're not on track, well, you're going to put that item on your issues list. And I'll tell you what the issues list in a little bit, but you're not going to discuss the numbers. This is not the time to do that. You're just simply indicating, are you on track? Are you not on track? That's 5 minutes. So after you do that quick review of the numbers, you're going to do a quick review of any key initiatives you're working on. So you're going to go around the room and everybody's going to briefly report on whether the initiative that they are in charge of is either on track or off track. Again, no discussion. So if initiative is on track, and by on track, I mean that the owner feels like he or she is going to be able to accomplish it by the end of the quarter, then you just move to the next initiative. But if the initiative is off track, again, it goes on the issues list. And this part of the meeting should take no longer than 10 minutes. 5 minutes, if you want to try to get to 5 minutes, but if you can't, no longer than 10 minutes. You just go around the room. Okay, where are we on this initiative? We're on track. Okay, great. Not on track. So let's put on the issues list and we can talk about it later. So after the review, the next step is to briefly go over any kind of student-teacher headlines. And this is where you and your team can briefly share any news for the week that has to do with your teachers or with if you're a group of teachers, with your students. So for example, somebody might say, Mrs. Flintstone got engaged, or Bart Simpson's parents are getting a divorce, so we need to keep an eye out for him. Or, Betty Rubble is about to go out on maternity leave. And, if it's good news, well, great, we're going to celebrate. But if it's bad news, it's either an FYI, or if it's serious enough and it's going to impact the initiatives that you're working on, you may need to add it to your issues list. But you're just going to go through quick, any news this week? What are the headlines? What are the things we need to be aware of? And they could be about students. They could be about teachers. They could also be about, listen, the 5th grade team is going on a field trip this week, so don't forget about that. Whatever that news is, you're just going to quickly just share those headlines. And again, this part of the meeting should take 5 minutes or so. Okay, so next is the to-do list. And this is where you're going to review all the to-dos from last week. Now, this is really important because this is where the accountability starts coming in. So you're just going to quickly go through all of the items, the action items that came out of last meeting. And remember, when you create an action item, you should have who will do what by when. And so you're quickly going to go through that list and you're just going to say, okay, someone has said they're going to do a scrub of the data and try to drill down, and figure out the key questions that kids missed on the last benchmark test. Where are we with that? Bob, that was yours. Is it done? And Bob's going to say, yep, done, got it here, or nope, didn't get a chance to get to it. So if it's done, you just strike it from the list. And if it's undone, you leave it on the list. Now here's the caveat. No to-do should remain on the list for more than 2 weeks. So this is a great way to track everything and to hold everybody accountable for getting their to-dos done. Because if your to-do is sitting on the list for, the first week and then people see it on the list again, they know you didn't do your job. It's there for everybody to see. And if a to-do is on the list for more than 2 weeks straight, 2 weeks in a row, then it would go on the issues list because it's further discussion that's needing. So all you're going to do right now is you're going to, it's a quick way to go through. Bob, did you get it done? Nope. Okay, we'll leave it on the list. When you need it done by next week. Okay, gotcha. Or Bob, did you get it done? Nope. But because I ran into an issue. Does that need to go on the issues list? Yeah, I think it does. We put on the issues list. Bob, did you get it done? Yep. Great job, Bob. Let's go on to the next person. That's all you're doing for this part of the meeting. And again, it should take no longer than 5 minutes. Okay, so now we're going to get to the heart of the meeting, and the issues list. And this is where you're going to spend the bulk of your meeting time. So at least, 45 minutes, 30 to 45 minutes at the minimum, but preferably an hour and 15 minutes, for those of you who have more time where you can have a 90-minute meeting. And so what you've done is you've kept this running list of issues that you need to discuss. And now it's time to go through the list together and to prioritize your issues to figure out what are your top 3. So again, in Builders Lab, when we're going to go through this in Builders Lab, I'm going to give you a matrix that helps you really easily prioritize your issues so that you're working on the right issues at the right time. And so that's kind of what you want to do. This is really, really important because you really want to make sure that you're focusing on the right issues and you're getting them resolved. So what you're going to do is you're going to think about what issue is most important, most urgent, and then you're going to try to figure out which ones you need to tackle first. And once you have your top 3 issues, go to work on issue number 1, the most important, the most urgent issue that you have. that's the one you're going to work on. And you're working on it until it's resolved. You're not going to discuss it and it's on the issues list next week. Once you take an issue off the issues list and make it a matter of discussion, you're going to keep discussing it and working on it until it's resolved. And the idea of the discussion is we want to go through the issue and we want to find a way to solve it. And then you're going to, as you're resolving it, you're going to be creating a plan of attack. And so any plan of attack that you generate from that discussion, that becomes your to-do list, and you will assign each action item an owner, and that'll be a part of the to-do list to get done during that week. Now, you may spend the meeting just tackling issue number one, and you never get to the other issues, and that's okay because you're still going to get at least one, your most important issue resolved, and you can't adjourn the meeting until you've resolved the issue. And once you resolve the first issue, if there's time, then you can move on to the next issue and so on until the meeting is over. Now, why is this so important? Well, most meetings are a lot of talk. They don't resolve anything, but by prioritizing your issues and then working on one issue at a time until it's resolved, you can actually come out of every meeting with your top issue resolved, settled, done. Now, in order to get your issue resolved, you can't just, sit around and discuss it and, and have conversations about it. You actually need to follow a specific protocol, and it's called the IDS, which stands for Identify, Discuss, and Solve. Pretty simple, right? So here's how it works. First, you need to identify the real issue. And that means that you're going to spend the first part of your discussion actually trying to get to the root of the problem. And that's really important. I find that so many people I work with, they think they've gotten to the root cause and they've really just named another symptom. And so I've kind of developed this process to help people get to the root cause of a problem. I'm going to be sharing it at Builders Lab. But basically, you're going to go through and you're going to list all the things that could be the root cause, and you just keep whittling it down until you get to the root cause. And I know there are a lot of root cause analysis worksheets out there, but I've seen people kind of really screw those up. They fill in the blanks, but they never get to the root cause. So you got to make sure that you're really getting to the root of the problem, because that way you can make sure you're solving the right problem. I mean, I see so many teams kind of jumping to a solution before they truly understand the problem. And then they wonder why their solutions don't work. And it's because they're actually solving the wrong problem. So I want you to spend some time here, really dig down and make sure that everybody agrees on the problem and understands the real issue that's involved in the problem and that you've gotten to the root cause. And so that discussion may take some time, but it's a very purposeful discussion because you're not just going around and around and around and, kind of naming out issues. You're saying, okay, that may be a symptom of it, but is that the root cause? And you're keeping the discussion focused until you get to the root cause. And then once you've determined the root of the problem, you can discuss it. You can talk about that root cause a little bit more, talk about how it's impacting things, talk about possible solutions. And then finally, you want to determine what solution you're going to pursue to solve the problem. And that way you walk out of your meeting with a plan of action that's really designed to actually resolve the issue. I mean, imagine that, leaving a meeting with a problem resolved. So after you do all of that, and that's going to be the bulk of your meeting, there's actually, one more step to your meeting agenda, and that's to go through the to-do list and kind of recap the to-dos to make sure that every single action item has been captured on that list. Every single action item has an owner so that that person is in charge. Now, remember, an owner doesn't mean that I have to do it. The owner means that I have to make sure it gets done. There's somebody in charge of following through with that action item. And there may be other people involved, but there has to be one person whose responsibility is to make sure the action item gets done. So once you do that, you're going to figure out, okay, this is the action item, this is the owner, and then you have to figure out when it's going to get done. So by the time you're done, you've worked on your most pressing issues and you've identified exactly how you're going to solve them. And then you go through the list of action items one more time and just make sure that each action item has a due date and a person responsible. So basically you're deciding who's going to do what by when for every single action item. And once you've decided what actions you're going to take, then you discuss whether there are any messages that need to be communicated to other stakeholders based on, the decisions that you made in the meeting. You don't want to make a decision in the meeting and then rumors get out or, the people who are going to be impacted never hear about that decision because they weren't in a meeting. So, for instance, you might have decided I don't know, you're going to, one of the things you're going to do is you're going to change the bell schedule next Friday. Well, you need to let teachers know that, or maybe decide that you're going to adjust your attendance procedures to make processing tardy students, kind of more streamlined. So teachers need to handle tardies differently. Well, again, you need to let the teachers know, but you also need to let the students and parents know. So you need to decide how you're going to communicate that, who's going to be in charge of it, so that when you leave the meeting, there's one message that comes out of the meeting. So who's going to be in charge of communicating? What's the message going to be? And how are you going to deliver that message? That goes on your list of action items. Okay, so now after you've done all of that, you're ready to adjourn the meeting. The one thing that I think is kind of cool that you can do, and we don't do it honestly at the end of every meeting, but I think we should, and that you should be doing that especially at first, is that you really need to rate the meeting at the end of the meeting on a scale of 1 to 10. 1 being this was like worse than death, and 10 being, wow, can we go another 90 minutes? This is an amazing meeting. And the goal should be that the average score should be at 8 or better for each meeting. So everybody's going to rate the meeting individually, then you collect it, and you're going to look for an average score of at least 8. And if you score lower than that, then you need to ask people for suggestions on how you can improve things next time. If you've got an 8 or better, then you're pretty good. So that's it. That's what I call the accountable weekly meeting agenda. So let me give you a couple of examples of how you can use this meeting agenda. So first, let's say that, let's look at a grade level team meeting and how they might be able to use it. And so they use their team meeting to discuss kids, to discuss, things that they're working on in their different grades. This is maybe at a middle school, for instance. Well, you could use this meeting agenda to help you keep track of students and to make sure that you're working towards your team goals. So you would start the meeting with your individual wins for the week. Like, did you plan an amazing lesson? Well, then you could brag about it. Or were you able to finally get through to a student? Well, celebrate that. And everybody's going to go around and share at least one personal win that they've had for the week. And then you quickly go through your team scorecard and look at the benchmark testing data, as well as the homework completion data and the attendance data for the week. And you see that your homework completion number is going down. So you add homework completion to the issues list. And maybe you notice that students aren't hitting some of the math benchmarks. So maybe you want to add that to the issues list as well. Okay, so next you go through the headlines. You quickly share a few student highlights, make any announcements, share that 2 teachers are going to be out on Friday, so you need to check in with their subs in case they need support, or you might want to raise some red flags about any students who aren't doing well and if they're in danger. And if it's really an issue, then you want to add those students' names to your issues list as well. And then after that, you're going to go through your to-dos from the prior meeting and check them off. And if somebody didn't complete their to-do list for the prior week, you add them back to the list for the coming week, check in, make sure, there's not any kind of bigger issue brewing there, and then you move on. Okay, so then you're going to dive into the meat of the meeting, which is your issues list. And on your list, maybe you've got several students who are showing some behavior issues and are starting to fail their classes. You've got a team field trip coming up in 3 weeks. You've got upcoming benchmark testing. You've got a rise in student tardies, especially in the afternoon after lunch. So after some discussion, you decide that the behavior issues are the most urgent and most important, because if you can nip those in the bud early and get those students back on track, then you can resolve a lot of other bigger problems, down the line. And so after that, you decide, okay, that's our first priority. So maybe then next we're going to talk about the upcoming benchmark assessments. And then you look and say, well, based on the to-do list, the field trip preparations are kind of under control. So it's really nothing urgent to discuss with that, so you can skip it for that meeting. And the tardies are becoming an issue. So if you have time, you're going to discuss those as well. And if not, you'll continue to monitor them as a group and stay on the issue, and it'll stay on the issues list. And maybe you'll talk about it at the next meeting. Okay, so then you decide you're going to tackle the behavior issues first. So you start by discussing what you as a team are seeing with students. And you look for the root cause, and you're going to ask questions like, is it just a few students, or are these issues more pervasive? And so maybe after some discussion, you realize that the behavior issues are really kind of isolated to just a few students. And then you dig some more. Why are just those students having behavior issues? And you decide as a team that, well, maybe what you're going to do as a first step is you need to contact their parents and then adjust their schedules so that these students are not in the same classes, because you really feel like the root cause is just the wrong combination of students. So you're going to have the guidance counselor follow up with the kids as well. So, and if that doesn't work, you'll get to the administration involved. So, one of you takes the lead on contacting parents and volunteers to, potentially scheduling a parent conference and putting it on the team Google Calendar. And another team member says, okay, well, I'll contact the guidance counselor and have her follow up with students. And then a third team member volunteers to figure out some suggested schedule changes and work with the guidance office to get the students new schedules. And all of that will go on the to-do list. Who's going to do what by when? Okay, so you check the clock and you realize you still have about maybe, 15 minutes left. So you decide, let's tackle the next issue on the issue list, which is the tardies. So as a team, you look at the tardy data and try to get to the root cause. And you just determine that most of the tardies are happening as students are returning from lunch or PE. So after a bit of brainstorming, you decide that you'll implement a different procedure for the lunchroom where teachers are going to walk their students back to their next class. And the team leader decides, okay, well, they volunteer. I'll speak with the PE teacher, find out why students may be coming to class tardy, and I'll report back on the next meeting. All that goes on the to-do list. Okay, so by this time, you only have a few minutes left. So you reviewed the to-dos. You make sure that each one has an owner and a deadline. Then you quickly go around the room and rate the meeting. And the average group rating is a 9. So you're good to go and you adjourn. So that's kind of an example of how you might use the same agenda if you're doing a grade level team meeting rather than just doing a leadership meeting. But regardless of how you use this agenda, every week you're going to go through the same routine. And because your agenda becomes your minutes, you have this running record of your team commitments, the issues you're tackling, and who's pulling their weight and who's slacking on their commitments. So if you're a leadership team, the meeting agenda looks very similar to what I just described. Your issues may be a little different, but you're going to follow the same agenda. You're going to tackle your most important issues first, and you're going to resolve at least one major issue per meeting. And if you are a grade level team, again, you're going to use the same kind of format every single week. And what's nice if you're an administrator, if you get your grade level teams on this meeting agenda, then you can monitor what's going on in the team meetings, even if you're not sitting in the team meetings. And if you see somebody who's consistently, showing up on the to-do list and their stuff is not done week after week after week, you can follow up and you have a running record that you can use to talk to them about it with. So it becomes this beautiful way to help people be accountable without, using some sort of draconian method to hold people accountable. So I'm telling you, this is a very powerful way to keep your entire team focused on what matters most and to make sure that you're actually being productive and accountable in your team meetings. So let me run through that kind of agenda one more time so you have it. And so you're going to start with a segue where you share team wins for the week. And then you go to the review of your team's scorecard to see how you're progressing towards your goals. And any number that's off track goes in your issues list. That's about 5 minutes. And then next, you're going to go through any headlines where you brief the team on what's happening with students or with teachers in your building. Again, no more than 5 minutes. After that, you're going to go through the to-do list from the prior week, and you're going to check off everything that's done. And anything that's still sitting on the to-do list for more than 2 weeks goes on the issues list. Again, 2 to 5 minutes. Then next, you're going to go through your issues list and you're going to prioritize your issues and you're going to focus on the most important or urgent first. And then you're going to go through one issue at a time and work through that issue until it's resolved. And then any action item that comes out of that discussion goes on the to-do list, and you're going to make sure that you're going to include who's going to do what by when. And you're going to go through as many issues as time allows. And then at the end of the meeting, you're going to review the to-do list one more time, make sure everybody's clear. You're going to develop a communication plan in case anything needs to be communicated out. And then you're going to rate the meeting. So that's it. That's my team meeting agenda. Now, I know it doesn't seem very fancy or super special or anything like that, but let me tell you something. This is the best team meeting agenda I've ever seen for helping teams get stuff done. You want to know my favorite part of the agenda is? I love that it holds everybody accountable for their part in a way that's not threatening or kind of in your face. Do your job. It's there and it's kind of obvious. And I've seen people who get really embarrassed because they keep showing up on the to-do list as not having their stuff done, and they start to just step up. So, the to-do list is really going to be a part of every meeting agenda. And that means if I don't get my part done before the meeting, it's part of the record and everybody can see it. So as a team leader, you don't have to call anybody out about not getting their stuff done because it's right there for everybody to see. And if I'm repeatedly not getting my part done, then that's also part of the record. So it's kind of genius. Now, if you listen this far, I hope you can see why I am just so geeked about this agenda format. I mean, here's the thing. A lot of people are meeting weekly anyway, but how much are you actually accomplishing in those meetings? I mean, how much time are you spending on the really important stuff? And after the meeting's over, how much of that discussion actually turns into real action that moves you closer and closer to your goals? This is one of the hidden obstacles that I see a lot of people facing. When you want to know why aren't you getting stuff done, a lot of times it's something as simple as a team meeting agenda. You know, if you're not getting stuff done, if you are stuck and you can't seem to get people moving, if all you do is sit around and talk about stuff, but you never actually have any action, then I strongly encourage you to change your meeting agenda to one that gets everybody on your team focused on your goals and helps them take action every single week towards your goals. It also helps you resolve your most important issues every single week. Every week you are walking out of that meeting and the thing that is the most important thing is getting done. And then my favorite part, it helps everybody stay accountable to the team for doing their part towards reaching your goals. So again, not fancy, not sexy, but it sure as heck is effective. Again, if you are not getting stuff accomplished, I urge you, steal my team meeting agenda, try it out, and then let me know how it works. Okay, so before I go, I want to remind you about today's sponsor, which is Builders Lab 2019. Right now, we're doing an early bird special where you can save $100 off of the ticket price up until October 17th, 2018. So just go to mindstepsinc.com/builders-lab. BUILDERS-LAB. So mindstepsinc.com/builderslab, and you can learn more about it. And I'll put a link to that in the show notes as well. And remember, every week we have show notes, and that's where you can get any free downloads or find out all the resources, links to all the resources that I mentioned in the podcast. And this week, if you go to the show notes, that's where you can download a copy of my team meeting agenda. And you can find that at schoolleadershipreimagined.com/episode 19. That's schoolleadershipreimagined.com/episode 19. Now, next week, we're going to be talking about a big obstacle that many builders face when they're trying to move their schools forward. And that's teacher resistance. So next week, I'm going to be talking about the 6 sources of resistance and how you can turn each source of resistance into a huge opportunity to get people on board and invested in the work that you're trying to get done in your school. So next week, we are going to tackle the resistance obstacle, and we're going to do it like a builder. I'll talk to you next time.
Thank you for listening to the School Leadership Reimagined podcast. For show notes and free downloads, visit schoolleadershipreimagined.com. School Leadership Reimagined is brought to you by MindSteps, Inc., where we build master teachers.